I'll just base my comments around these 4 themes. First, my overall comments on the paper, comments on the literature review, some comments on the model, and some conclusions. So what can I say about the paper? First, it was extremely clearly written, so thank you for that. The focus of the paper, the dependent variable, as we heard, was on bank risk-taking. And it tackles a subject that has received very little empirical attention in sub-Saharan Africa. That is gender diversity. And as the speaker mentioned, the main problem statement in this specific context is that even today in Kenya, some bank boards have 0 women directors, and the average is quite low at 19%. I'll comment that I feel there's very little discussion on the theoretical aspects and the how. And then I feel that there's a bit of disconnect between the 2 independent variables, so I didn't see necessarily the logic in including the second independent variable, economic uncertainty, and I'll give more comments about that in the model section. So the speaker did quite a broad literature review, and he very clearly highlighted that there's a debate on the role of gender diversity. He stated, those empirical studies that show there's a positive relationship, that show there's a negative relationship, but I felt that there could have been a bit more in-depth discussion of the why. So I didn't feel that the literature review was critical enough. Some of these differences can be due to sample size, geography, type of models. It felt very much like these people say yes, these people say no, these people are neutral, but there was no serious engagement that the ones they say yes, what is good about them, the ones they say no, what is good about them, to kind of give us a bit of more of kind of really understanding of the people who are trying to understand these issues, how are they doing the research. I felt there's some key papers that were missing. Now, again, this is a University of Nairobi thesis, and I know many people don't go to read University of Nairobi thesis, but now with the e-repository, these are available. So this is actually quite a new thesis, which I don't know, the author is not my student, so I don't know him, but I really felt it was a good study, and it is very linked with some of the research in this paper, so should be included. I felt that there was an over-reliance on papers that use differences in gender based on psychology, but whilst the speaker didn't say it here, but in the writing they do emphasize the problem of relying on stereotypes, so that's good, but I think we need to move beyond this concept of lower risk-taking to really understand the channels through which women in boards lead to higher profitability or lower bank failure. So, to move forward, what is the theory of change besides this reliance on lower risk because of gender and structural and social differences? There's some literature I've read which emphasizes a monitoring channel, so that female directors basically provide stronger monitoring. And having been on boards, I can say that I've never gone to a board meeting without having read my material, where there's some men who come and open the envelope as you enter the board meeting. One very large study, which I found very interesting, is this one by Cardillo, Onali, and Tolucio of 2020, and they cover over 105 listed banks in 15 European countries, and they find that on average, an increase of 1 standard deviation in gender diversity decreases the probability of bank bailout by 2.44%. Now, this is very interesting because, we've been thinking about bank profitability, but at the end of the day, we know that banks have a fiduciary duty, and when bank fails, there's significant impact on the whole economy and on taxpayers for bailouts. So this issue should not be looked at only in terms of like, do gender diversity, it's good for a particular bank. It's good for the entire economy. I liked that the dependent, now I'll go into my comments on the model. It was already captured here, but I liked that there was a more multifaceted nature of how the bank risk was captured. I felt that maybe in the future, I'm not 100% sure how you do it, but if there was a more nuanced way to understand the D-risk, because as we know, a very a very high deposit to loan ratio means that the bank's not doing that much lending and not actually fulfilling its intermediation purpose. So this figure needs to have a more nuanced role rather than, just like a linear thing. The control factors were bank-specific factors and macroeconomic factors, so that was good. The first independent variable was gender diversity, which we've discussed. I found the second variable and the way it was used in this study a bit confusing. I felt it actually belonged more to a control variable. So as the speaker had explained, it's based on like a type of a content analysis, where the word uncertainty is counted. So in this case, it's not bank specific. It's a figure for Kenya. So I didn't understand how it was used as an independent variable. And, bank risk rises with economic uncertainty, and, because the bank risk figure has an NPL and economic uncertainty increases NPL, you can see that there's some sort of like the same thing is being used to explain. So I don't feel it's really adding to the paper, and but I leave it to the to KBA to maybe see why it should be there. Okay, so my final remarks, it's a very important area of study, and I'd really like to thank the speaker for trying to do the study, having done studies where I try get data from specific bank statements. I know this is not easy. As economists, we're quite used to just getting data from secondary sources. I feel there's a need to develop the analysis further. And I really feel that this paper would be really added by trying to have a better understanding of the how. So if you have an in-depth case study of the few banks that have 50% board representation, how did that happen? And then within that case, like case studies of their impact on actually bank risk-taking. The policy conclusions, whilst mentioned in the speaking, I felt were not drawn out enough in the one I read. So there is not necessarily just a need for gender quotas, but a need for enforcement of gender quotas. And where does that come from in Kenya? Does it come from the central bank? Does it come from KBA? Does it come from some sort of ESG monitoring tool? So. But also to be aware that gender diversity is not a solution for all issues. And in fact, a lot of the literature review I read said that gender diversity only helps if the banks are well capitalized. So I'd just like to acknowledge an ex-student of mine who helped me with some research assistance. And thank you for listening.